Hey there, nerds! Hi, I'm Rovenia from Shadowfire Quills, and it's movie time! Specifically, it is time to go forth and talk about ONWARD. Now, before we move on, just a quick heads up, or actually two. The first will be a spoiler warning. This video will contain major plot points and especially the ending of the Pixar movie ONWARD. So if you haven't watched it yet and don't want to get spoiled, stop this video now and go watch the movie. And then come right back, cause I'm not done with you yet. The second heads up concerns my friend and co-host to the channel, Rosemoon. She's not out of the picture, don't worry. But because we've still got to figure out how to conquer the world, organize our combined efforts properly, we've decided that at least the first few videos will contain only one of us at a time, before we hit you with double chibi power. With that out of the way, on to our topic of the day. What is the role of the father in the story of ONWARD? Now obviously, role of the father needs some clarifications. We'll look at the actual father of the family in question, so the individual. What do we know about him? But we'll also look into how he was as a father, and what this story says about fatherhood in more general terms. So, let's talk characters. The premise and beginning of the movie settles around the Lightfoot family, an elven family in a world similar to modern Earth, but with all inhabitants being mythical creatures. Family Lightfoot is your standard nuclear family with teenage protagonist Ian, his older brother Barley, the mom, the dad, and a pet dragon. Just completely average. Except the standard is actually broken because the dad is dead when the movie starts. This means Ian, the younger son, never got to meet his dad since the latter died from an unnamed sickness, and only the mom and Barley had actually met him. Now the mom is shown to have a new boyfriend, a centaur police officer, but the sons don't seem to have integrated him into their lives all that much. Ian obsesses over connecting with his biological dad, and holds on to anything with a tie to the father, from an old college sweater to a recording of the dad's voice. He even makes notes on self-improving and wants to be just like his dad, or what he thinks his dad was like. Barley, meanwhile, is stuck in playing a historical RPG, and is viewed as rather embarrassing by his younger brother. So, how is this still all about a dead dad, you wonder? Well, when Ian turns 16 at the start of the story, the mom presents both of her sons with a gift from their father. The boys were to get it when they were both older than 16, and as this is technically true now, here they go! A wizard staff, complete with magical crystal and the instructions on how to resurrect the dad for a day. Average birthday presents. And while this is all completely normal and mundane, Ian accidentally manages to resurrect his dad, up until the waist. With the dad now being a confused pair of legs and the sons freaking out, the story swings into an adventure arc, as the brothers set out together to find a new magical crystal and fully revive their dad before he disappears forever. Since his sons cling to his revival so desperately, this dad must have been one hell of a person. So, what do we know of him? There are some things we get through the dialogue alone. He was an accountant, he really got into his world's magical history when he got sick. He apparently had to grow into his confident self first. While this is all nice and easy to get, it's not exactly what makes this dad the beloved person he really was. Though I'm sure there's plenty of nice accountants out there. Something that sticks out immediately is how openly loving and caring a husband and dad he was. This is shown through the environment. The family pictures Ian has on his wall, the banter we hear between him and the mom on tape, Barley's 3 warm memories at the beginning of the story, and how the family members still treat each other now. As this dad seems to have been rather outgoing once he found himself, he spread a lot of happy and funny memories in others outside of the family too. This is most evident by the one college buddy whom Ian runs into just before school. But most important of all, this dad was dedicated beyond normal measures to his family. And he was creative in showing it. The mom tells Ian that the dad got into this whole magical stuff rather late into his sickness, because he was that determined he would meet his younger son before death. Now we know that didn't happen, he died too soon. But he recognized that, and he set up a way for his sons to carry on his efforts and reunite them after all, even if only for a day. So, we see very early on that this father expresses the same close bond to both of his sons as the mom. And he even reciprocates the intense desire of his younger son to finally meet in person. This is the stuff we get from only hearing of the guy, but now we actually have him here. So, what do we get to know about this dad once he's a pair of legs? Well, he's confused at first, but once his older son Barley taps his foot like he used to as a kid, the father shows immediate recognition. Sure, he briefly draws back in shock, but he also quickly moves forward again and continues the gesture, showing he understands and he's happy it worked out somehow. It is generally impressive how expressive this guy's legs are, considering we get a lot of emotion out of his stance when he reaches out for his sons and explores his environment. Even as their journey progresses, this pair of legs demonstrates how easily the dad could go with the flow and make the best out of many situations. How he eases tensions between his sons in doing so. He is always close to them, even before the brothers tie a dog leash to him, and he uses his almost comedic interventions to show he cares. Essentially, he invites both of his sons to join in his behavior and get along. However, he is just a pair of legs at the moment. A confident pair of legs, but legs nonetheless. So, little to our surprise and much to the brothers' horror, he almost marches right off into a bottomless pit. In moments like those, the brothers take care of their dad and have to be the ones leading him around. They save him from the pit thing, they save each other and the dad when they upset the biker pixies, and Ian sees Barley tie up the father's shoelaces after he trips during a reasonably weird dancing session. This moment right there is the first necessary realization for Ian. He sees his older brother act like a father would to his child. By the way, keep Barley in mind as we go on. But for now, we can tie this to another aspect of the dad, namely whom he influenced and how. Of the three most important characters influenced by the dad, let's start with the mom. For one, the couple seem to have known each other for a pretty long time, seeing as the mom talks about her partner from when he was 16. So there's a lot of memories on her part and many chances to have formed a strong bond. And that's exactly what happened. Everything we get to see as a memory of her husband is in a positive light. How they started their family, how she saw him grow into a more confident person, and probably sees a lot of that in her younger son now. How she still misses him but has moved on. It must have been hard for her to watch him turn to magic of all things to keep himself alive and meet Ian. She didn't believe in this stuff after all, but she knew he cared and tried. And speaking of moving on her part, her new boyfriend, the Centaur, shows quite some similarities to her former husband. The Centaur boyfriend is also a pretty goofy guy, and also caring, though in a slightly different way. And he too treats people in his environment with respect. Even if he isn't portrayed as the most serious of cops, the mom sure knew what she wanted in a relationship again. A caring and respectful partner, just like her husband back in his days. That is a hugely positive impact to have on someone's life, even if you can't be in it anymore. Next up we have Ian. Now I know he never met his dad properly, but he's obviously wanted to all his life. And he has created some sort of fantasy about his dad and how he must have been. Adding to that, Ian writes a list of things he wants to do and share with his dad. Even if those fantasies and dreams are based on the good memories of brother and mother, and even if there is magic in that world, the reality is Ian never actually meets his dad. He wants to, and he is sad when he doesn't get the chance in the end. But by said end, Ian has noticed something way bigger and more important to him. He had a father figure all along. And speaking of father figure, we come to Barley, the older son. Barley had their dad in his life for the first few years of it. It isn't clear how long their shared time was, but Barley was definitely still a little boy when his dad got sick and eventually died. However, this means the father had all the more direct impact on Barley. In a way, the dad is responsible for Barley's insane interest in their world's magical history, and probably also that RPG of his. With that comes a very important trait though, creativity, especially in the sense of working with what you've got. Barley isn't creative in the sense of being an artist, at least not that was shown. But he is definitely more than capable of working with the stuff around him. The best example for that is actually his beat-up van, Guinevere. He built her himself, piece by piece, from whatever he found or could get his hands on. So, slightly more creative approaches to problems seem to run in the family. Anything from revival spells to that van. The dad is also very likely the reason for Barley's caring nature toward his little brother and mom. Barley does not act like the man in the house, but he's definitely trying to fill a gap, especially for Ian. This is best illustrated through the flashbacks Ian has from his childhood, where we get to see Barley helping or teaching Ian, be that encouraging him to get into the water, how to ride a bike, or how to take down an opponent with a pillow. Barley might be obnoxious here and there, but he is just as caring as his father was. And this is actually where Barley was impacted by his dad in a negative way, though unintentionally so. He grew up most of his life lacking a father figure. Barley still knows what his dad was like, and that he loved him, but he still didn't have that type of guidance most of his life. During an underground section of their journey, Barley opens up to Ian and tells him about his last memory of their dad. How his dad was lying in hospital, all those tubes attached to him, his dad looking so much different. Barley was asked to go into that room as a little boy and say goodbye to his dad, but he couldn't bring himself to do it because he was so afraid. And now, years later, he views himself as a coward for acting like that, and swore he'd never be afraid of anything again. Obviously, this wasn't anyone's intention. Well, except the writers and producers of the movie. But the father wouldn't have wanted his son to feel afraid as a kid, and he sure didn't want Barley to blame himself for anything years later. But he wasn't there to tell his son anymore, at least until the very end of the movie. And this is where we can bring these aspects of the father together and look at the theme of fatherhood. Throughout the movie, the brothers pursue the chance to see their dad again. And because this movie focuses on Ian's perspective so much, we were led to believe in the beginning that he would see his dad at last. But when we look at how Barley opens up and talks about his last memory of the father, we realize he's the one who needs their dad more than Ian. And that is because of how they grew up. Ian realizes after the flashbacks that he always had a fatherly figure growing up, namely Barley. The first hint at that is shown when Ian sees Barley tie up the dad's shoelaces like a dad would for his kid. But at this point in the movie, we've also seen Ian write down a list of things he wanted to do with his dad. Practice car driving, have a heart-to-heart talk, tell him about his life. As Ian ticks off all of those things from the list, he realizes that he's always had a dad in a way, and that he's had all of that affection and care in his life. It wasn't the way he'd originally dreamt of it, or wanted it, but it was always there. That type of support can come from varying sources. Barley, on the other hand, lost his father figure as a little kid and hasn't had one since, but acted as one instead. Their dad showed care and devotion from the very beginning, something Barley also expressed. But Barley went a bit further by putting his own needs back for Ian and being there for him. Now that Ian has realized this, it is time for him to do the same thing for Barley. Give his older brother the last minutes their dad has of the day to sort things out and properly find closure. That is why this ending was the best the producers could have chosen. While Ian is sad he still didn't meet his dad, he found out he always had a replacement in Barley, and that it is Barley who needed the dad right now, not Ian himself. If anything, then this is the most concrete spin on fatherhood this movie takes. Not lead your family, oh no, but be there for your family, take care of them, and leave them on the best path possible. This is tied up at the end when Barley comes back to Ian and tells him of the chat with his dad. After some question of theirs are answered, Barley mentions the things he told their dad about Ian. The dad's response was to acknowledge how Barley probably contributed to many things Ian is today. He acknowledged what his older son did for his younger one when he couldn't. Because of the impact he had on his older son, he left his younger one on the best possible path. And there you have it, one of the best designed dads in movies, though he wasn't even there most of the time. Very good score in terms of dad points, plus the neat bonus of including magic. What makes this movie all the better for me has to lie in the way the parents are presented. Both mom and dad are important to their kids. Though I hope it is still okay I didn't focus that much on the mom in the video on being a dad. But both parents are needed and both should try and be there for their kids. They kinda depend on them. While this couple was nearly identical in how they interacted with their kids, other couples with greater personal differences can still be good teams too. This movie just shows parents who both possess soft qualities and then focus on those. But do let me know about your take on this movie and whom you resurrected at age 16. If you enjoyed this type of content, give it a like and share it with others. Like maybe a dad, or a brother, or a pet dragon, or your friendly neighborhood manticore, whom I sadly couldn't fit in here. Maybe I can find a way to include manticores in the future. Either way, see you for the next movie time. Bye!